Good morning and welcome to Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship, commonly referred to as BUF. We are so glad you could join us this morning here in the sanctuary and out there on Zoom. My name is Pam Graham, and I'm fortunate enough to be the celebrant this morning and assisting Reverend Barbara Gilday. Barbara is a member of BUF and shares that she came to professional ministry in midlife. Her life has been full of inquiry, diversity, social justice, and creating opportunities for connection and sharing with others. Currently, she's exploring new and deeper ways to continue exploring as life capacities change. Anybody over 70 knows what I'm talking about. And she reports that she is having quite an adventure, some of which we'll hear about today. And now I invite you to be still, be restful, and be receptive.
Thank you, Melanie. When somebody is speaking at BUF, they coordinate with the musician. And Melanie said, what sort of mood do you want to create? And we talked a little bit about that, and that was perfect. Thank you. So, life has its twists and turns, and sometimes we need some tools to figure out which twist or turn to take. And this is something that Martin Luther King said that I thought was very wise and pertains to the subject this morning. On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expedience asks the question, is it politic? And vanity comes along and asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do it because conscience tells him it is right. Let's look together at hymn 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are, and we're going to split into two groups after we sing it through a couple of times. So we'll sing the whole thing a couple of times, and then Pam and I will lead you into this side, that side, until we say stop. Please stand as you're willing and able.
Come,
The theme of this morning's service is, who am I? Have you ever wondered who you were? I do it all the time. I've been doing it for 77 years, and I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm hoping that this morning I'll even find out more. And as Barbara lights the chalice, I invite you all to join me in reflecting on that question about yourselves. Who am I? And now that you know who you are, let's join together and recite our covenant. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service gives it life. Celebrating our diversity and joined by a quest for truth, we work for peace and honor all creation. This is our covenant.
Okay, I see one child who hopefully is going to come and join me for a story. And any other children of other ages, if you'd like to come.
And this morning we're going to do it a little different.
Here comes a child.
Rather than have a book to reflect on,
Would you like to come?
we're going to have it up here on the screen so that everybody can see it.
This was one, oops. Need a microphone. This was one of my kids' favorite books when they were young, and I'd have the book to show you today, but I left it at home. So we're looking at it up on the screen. There's no such thing as a dragon, right? Next. Billy Bixby was rather surprised when he woke up one morning and found a dragon in his room. It was a small dragon, and it wagged its tail happily when Billy patted its head. Billy went downstairs to tell his mother. "There's no such thing as a dragon," Mother said. Billy sat down at the table, and the dragon sat on the table. That sort of thing wasn't usually permitted, but there wasn't much Billy's mother could do about it. She had already said there was no such thing as a dragon, and of course, if there's no such thing, you can't very well tell it to get down off the table. Mother made pancakes for Billy, but the dragon ate all of them. Mother made some more pancakes, but the dragons ate those too. Mother kept making pancakes until she ran out of batter, and Billy only got one of them, but he said, well, that's all he really wanted anyway. Billy went upstairs to brush his teeth, and Mother started clearing the table. The dragon, who was nearly as big as Mother by this time, made himself comfortable on the hall rug and went to sleep. By the time Billy came back downstairs, the dragon had grown so much he filled the whole hall, and Billy had to go around by way of the living room to get to where his mother was. "I didn't know dragons grew so fast," said Billy. "There's no such thing as a dragon," said his mother. Cleaning the downstairs took Mother all morning, what with the dragon in the way, and having to climb in and out of windows to get from room to room. By noon, the dragon filled the house. Its head hung out the front door, its tail hung out the back door, and there wasn't a room in the house that didn't have some part of the dragon in it. When the dragon awoke from his nap, he was hungry. A bakery truck went by, and the smell of fresh bread was more than the dragon could resist. The dragon ran down the street after the bakery truck. The house went along, of course, like the shell on a snail. The mailman was just coming up the path with some mail for the Bixbys when their house rushed past him and headed down the street. He chased the Bixby's house for a few blocks, but he couldn't catch it. When Mr. Bixby came home for lunch, the first thing he noticed was that the house was gone. Luckily, one of the neighbors was able to tell him which way it went. Mr. Bixby got into his car and went looking for the house. He studied all the houses as he drove by, and finally he saw one that looked familiar. Billy and Mrs. Bixby were waving from a top window. Mr. Bixby climbed over the dragon's head, onto the porch roof, and through the upstairs window. "How did this happen?" Mr. Bixby asked. "It was the dragon," said Billy. "There's no such," Mother started to say. "There is a dragon," Billy insisted, "a very big dragon." And Billy patted the dragon on the head. The dragon wagged its tail happily, and then, even faster than it had grown, the dragon started getting smaller. And soon, it was kitten size again. "I don't mind dragons this size," said Mother. "Why did it have to grow so big?" "I'm not sure," said Billy, "but I think it just wanted to be noticed." Think about times when your mom's voice gets louder and louder and louder. Maybe because you're not paying attention. Or maybe your voice gets bigger and bigger and bigger because your mom or your dad isn't listening to you, right? Yeah. Thank you for having the courage to come up. And now you have all kinds of people to do fun things with you if you'd like.
And we want to sing them off to their hour of discovery. We hold you in our love as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life. We hold you in our love as you go. I think of that dragon as that part of me that I don't want to recognize and that grows and grows and grows until I acknowledge who I am. And that dragon is part of me. So rather than resist and have it pop up unexpectedly at inopportune times, we can acknowledge and say, she's showing up, so let's put a smile on her face, welcome her, and go on with the business. And the business at hand right now are a few announcements. We hope you will join us this morning after the service for the fellowship hall down in the basement, and for coffee and conversation. And there are red cups for newcomers so that we can identify you and make an attempt to welcome you in a personal way. And then next week, we'll be having a potluck following service downstairs in the hall. And we encourage everyone to come. And did you ever wonder where the term and the practice of potluck came? Some folks say it started in the 30s when things were scarce. And in order to enjoy a variety of food with your friends, everybody would bring a dish. That's a nice, and I know it happened, concept. in reality. Others say that it came as a result of having unexpected guests show up all at once, having to go into the refrigerator, see what you have, throw it in the pot, and good luck. And then others say that it is a spin-off of the Native American celebration of potlatch, which means giving away. So again, we hope that you will come next Sunday and bring a dish and enjoy the company. As for today downstairs, in addition to the coffee and conversation, we're going to have, we provide an opportunity for you to practice your democracy by filling out these postcards that are already here. They're stamped, and there's a script for you to handwrite a note to a registered voter in a swing state. We send these out well, it's a UU tradition. It's, I can't remember the name exact. Get out the vote. UU vote, okay. So that's something happening today, and it'll happen for the next couple of weeks. And it's in the library, so it's a little quieter than having to try to concentrate with everybody having a good time with their coffee and conversations. So right now I'd like to invite Rupert Anton up to the microphone to address an important issue.
Thank you, Pam. I think I know who I am today. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, recognizes today, the 11th day of August, each year, as National Day of Mourning for African Americans killed in police-involved interactions. For more information, I have posted the full resolution on the bulletin boards up here and downstairs. Even though that was 2016 when that was resolved, those statistics and that they're quoted in it are still relevant today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rupert. And now I invite Ellie Freebold to perform a lovely spiritual, African American spiritual. Do you have a little blurb you want to say about it, or?
I'm gonna let everyone take it in and take the words in and make them your own. Deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I want to cross over into campground. Deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I want to cross over in
Thank you, Ellie. Barbara, that was beautiful.
Well, for those of you who haven't already figured out who you are from the little reflection that Pam did, I think about times in my life when I have needed some guidelines to help me to answer that question. And, you know, graduating from university, going off to Ghana for 2 years, coming back from Ghana, becoming a parent, getting a new job, losing a job, retiring, sort of, and health issues. So many times that we have opportunities to ask that question again, who am I now? In preparing for my move last year, I was going through all my CDs and listening to them and deciding which ones I'd keep and which ones I would let go. And I came across one from the 2007 assembly by Robert Fulghum, who actually was a minister here for a short time, I think less than a year, and went on to Edmonds. But he's the one who wrote All I Ever Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Is that the right name? Yeah. And he gave this really interesting sermon called, What in God's Name Am I Doing? Have you ever asked yourself that? Well, I listened to it, and it was good. Of course, it was Robert Fulghum. And as I pondered his message, I realized how practical it was. So I'm going to steal his 4 points and his what in God's name am I doing sort of approach as I speak today. So there are 4 questions that he asked. The first one was, and I want you to think about the angry parent or the upset parent when I mention these 4. The first one is, what on earth have you done? You ever seen a parent like that or been a parent like that? I was around 8 when my father had occasion to ask a question like that of me. There was a dear man called Ziggy who was 3 doors down from us building what would become the first house in what became a huge empire for Ziggy. He was a Bulgarian refugee and a philanthropist, a wonderful man, and he was very kind to me. I would play around in the dirt and pick up the bottles and take them to the store for the 2 cents for each bottle, and you know, we had a nice relationship back and forth with the builders and myself. And then one day, when they left, there was this big vat of wet plaster in the garage. Well, the garage hadn't been plastered, so I wrote on the garage, thinking that they would come the next day and say, oh, ha, 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 that's cute. I wrote, Lee Simpson loves Douglas Rattray, and went home anticipating their laughter. Well, what came the next day was a policeman. Did anybody at this house know Lee Simpson or Doug Rattray? And my father called me, and I confessed. And my intention had not been to do something bad. It had been to give them a laugh. Well, they didn't laugh. What Ziggy said to me was, I can't believe my little friend would do something like that. Oh. Yeah, Wendy just did it, you know. Oh. I was crushed. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. And I had no voice. So, as I recall, that was kind of the end of our relationship, which is a pity. But I learned several lessons that day. It wasn't for naught. I learned to ask before using other people's possessions. I learned not to mock my friends. And in truth, Doug Rattray was not the favorite person in our class, so it was a bit of a jab. I learned to take responsibility for what I'd done. And although it has taken me years and years to learn, rather than being shut down by a comment or an accusation, as I was that day, I can share my side of the story. What would it have been like if I'd have been able to say, Ziggy, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you weren't going to plaster the garage. And how would things have been different? These lessons were not lost on me, and I don't remember what the punishment was, but nothing could have been worse than the shame and sadness that I felt about that. And the stories never left me. Actually, when I told my brother I was going to preach about this, he said, let's look him up. And we looked him up, and he's given millions to hospitals and universities and all kinds of things from this little Bulgarian immigrant status. Second question. What in the name of God are you doing? As we age and grow in wisdom, we deal with bigger issues. And hopefully we've learned from some of the smaller ones along the way. Our values are refined, and we discover what we personally hold sacred. Many of you will know that from 1967 to 2008, alcohol sales in Linden were prohibited on Sunday. It was challenged at the City Council in 2008, and they discussed whether the community's values and character might be damaged and whether the conservative Christian population in the town might be adversely affected. Some of the people who belonged to those rather rigid churches, including some of their ministers, fought mightily against changing the law. During the battle, one of my friends was in a convenience store outside of Linden, just outside of the city, one day on Sunday, when she encountered one of those very adamant ministers buying a bottle of booze. Which leads me to Fulghum's second question. What in the name of God are you doing? What values was that minister living by? Certainly, in the moment, truth and integrity were not among them. In the end, the majority decided that a one-day-a-week ban made no sense, and it was revoked. The third question, again, thinking of the frustrated parent, what will you think of next? Have any of you ever had this happen to you? I remember the day I walked in on my two little kids in the bathtub, and there was a whole roll of toilet paper in the bathtub with them. Well, a few years ago in Mount Vernon, Mayor Jill Boudreau, does anybody know? Boudreau, watched people's faces during a meeting of Mount Vernon and Skagit County leaders as they heard the cost estimate for a new city library and community center, which you've probably seen going up. It was about $48 million at the time, and I think it's about $53 million now. Jill said, the people looked so defeated, but she wouldn't take never for an answer. She said, when I heard that, to me, that's a challenge. And besides, our community deserves it. So Boudreau nearly single-handedly made sure the city would get the money for the commons without raising taxes by writing 38 separate grants. And if any of you have ever written a grant, that's not a small thing. Mount Vernon Library Commons is scheduled for completion this year. They're working on landscaping and final touches inside now. Boudreau did more than reshape Mount Vernon's downtown with an impressive new public building. Those who worked with her said she also reformed City Hall culture, bringing women and people of different backgrounds to the table by listening weekly to the public and knocking on doors to meet others and creating the most diverse city council in Mount Vernon history. She broke a mold by being very pro-community, pro-education, pro-empower women. She has retired as mayor after 3 terms, but she isn't done with city business yet, She continues with various projects, including the completion of the Library Commons. And her parting advice to the new mayor: talk to each other, seek to understand each other. Our city team has proven we can do the right things. Fulghum's final question: who do you think you are? Who could have imagined the impact that a piece of broken glass could have on one person? Alexander Papaderos was born on the island of Crete. During the Second World War, his hometown was destroyed by the Nazis, and Alexander, still a child, ended up in a concentration camp. After the war, he was determined to be a force for peace and forgiveness. He studied theology and in 1965 opened an institute designed to promote peace and reconciliation. One day, while taking questions at the end of a lecture, Papaderos was asked, "What's the meaning of life?" He opened his wallet and took out a small round mirror and held it up for everybody to see. During the war, when he was a small boy, he heard a motorcycle accident not far from his house, and going down there found that the German cyclist had died and the mirror had shattered. And as a child, he picked up a piece of that mirror and became fascinated with what he could do about that. He was fascinated that he could shine the light into dark places, in holes and crevasses. And over time, that became a metaphor for what he might do with his life. In answer to the question about the meaning of life, he said, "I am a fragment of a mirror whose whole design and shape I do not know. Nevertheless, with what I have, I can reflect light into the dark places of the world, into the black places in the hearts of people, and change some things in some people. Perhaps others may see and do likewise. This is what I am about. This is the meaning of my life." I want to read that quote again. "I am a fragment of a mirror whose whole design and shape I do not know. Nevertheless, with what I have, I can reflect light into the dark places of this world, into the black places in the hearts of men, and change some things in some people. Perhaps others may see and do likewise. This is what I am about. This is the meaning of my life." What part of the fragment of being do you represent in your life? And how are you sharing it with the world? These are the 4 questions, again, to help you figure it out. What have you done? What are you doing now? What will you think of next? And who do you think you are? Good questions to ponder as we look at our place in the world for the coming years, whatever age and stage we're at, and also helpful to guide us in choosing our leaders in the coming election. Amen, and blessed be. And now, we're going to sing hymn 194 in the hymnal, "Faith is a Forest."
Yeah.
Thank you. Very, very significant in discovering who I am. At this time, I'd like to introduce a guest speaker we have and tell a little bit about why she's here. Each month, we set aside one collection for a local nonprofit that reflects our principles in the public service they perform. This month's recipient is NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization right here in Bellingham. And so I'd like to introduce Rosemary Webb, former president and current director of Whatcom County NAMI, NAMI board, and to tell you about the vital services NAMI provides. Good. Great.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here. The sermon couldn't help but bring me back a few years to a time when I was asked by a group that I was participating in to define my life. You know, who am I? And we were encouraged to make lists of who, you know, of what we think we are. And I remember getting up to like 30, 40 points on my list and thinking, wow, this is really difficult. And then I came back to it a week later and I crossed some things out and added some more things and said, well, this is still difficult, but I'm beginning to realize that life changes, that you change, that the whole process of becoming and being changes, and that's what it's all about. It's about the journey. And in my journey, about 8 years ago, I got involved with NAMI. I did because I had been struggling for the previous 10, 12 years with my son, who was diagnosed at a tender age of about 20 with schizophrenia bipolar 1. And it's been almost 25 years, and there was no NAMI in Wisconsin where I was at the time. And when I came to Washington, one of the first things I looked at was what kind of resources were available to a parent with a schizophrenic child. And my child is 41 years old, so he's not a child anymore, but growing kind of stopped at the age of 18 when symptoms first began to happen. And I discovered NAMI, and I got involved right away, and I am here because of what NAMI helped me do. It helped me learn, it helped me cope, and it helped me find a better way. And it helped me guide my son, and it helped me cope with my son. So why I'm here today is to fundraise. NAMI, I am the volunteer bookkeeper. I actually do the books for NAMI. I prepare the tax returns and or the stuff that goes to the tax preparer. And I can tell you that since COVID, NAMI has more than doubled in its outreach and its activity and its participation. Before COVID, we had like two group meetings a month for families living with someone in the family with a mental health condition. And now we have 8. And the same thing happened with our connections group, peer group meetings. We had 2 a month, and now we have 6. And all of these groups are well participated in. And the need and the awareness of what NAMI offers and what we offer one another. It isn't about an organization offering something to a needy person. This is about people who experience a mental illness or who support someone with a mental illness, helping one another. It's grassroots. We are not psychiatrists. We are not counselors. We are people who live with a mental illness or live with someone who does. And almost all of us know somebody like that. And I was talking to Gail this morning, and Gail, you know, we talk about disability is disability. Mental illness is no different than someone who lives with another disability. It is something life has given you, and you have to learn to cope with it. And the sooner we can deal with stigma, the better. A lot of our programs, like the ETS program, is called Ending the Silence. And it's about young people who go into elementary schools, and middle schools and high schools, and faith groups doing a presentation on their experience with mental illness, how they recognized what was going on, how they learned about what was going on, how they learned to cope, how they came to accept what they were dealing with and recover. And this is a really important message, a message of hope and a message of healing for people who live with mental illness or who support someone who lives with mental illness. I was going to give you a little bit of history of our finances, since I'm asking for money. Last year, we had a high of $161,000 in revenues, in receipts. And about half of that came from grants. We are writing grants now. We weren't writing grants before COVID, but now we have to write grants because we're not supporting one person, paid employee. We are supporting 3 paid employees. And we have more than 20 trained program volunteers, people who lead these groups. And we're training all the time because it's a lot to ask of people to do this kind of work over a long period of time. So about 50% of our income comes from grants. The rest of it comes from us, from our local organizations and people who donate to NAMI. I will be here after the service and downstairs, and I have a bunch of these little things. These are our standby program, and it basically lists all the programs that NAMI has, and when they occur, who they're aimed at, and also our website, because we have a lot of information on our website. It's www.namiwhatcom.org. Thank you very much for your time today. Oops, I think I took your stuff.
Yep, let me hold you.
That's you. Thank you.
I want to testify to the efficacy of NAMI. I have a daughter who is now 50. The youngest is in her mid-50s. When she was very young, she was born with congenital heart defects, experienced preverbal trauma, and among other things. In 2015, she had a breakdown, a total, complete breakdown. I had to nurse her back from infancy to be able to take care of herself and return to her wife. That took a year. During that time, she couldn't talk to anybody. We had to get rid of our dog. I was living with her 24/7, sleeping, eating, using the restroom with her, everything. The caregiver in a situation of mental illness often suffers the stigma and the exhaustion and the overwhelmed and the helplessness and the hopelessness. And NAMI was available for me as a person to get support from. Nobody told me what to do. It was in group setting. There was information on how to take care of yourself and how to take care of your family. And I utilized NAMI services, and I tell you, it saved my life. It saved my daughter's life, and it saves lives every day. And it levels the playing field. The stigma is gone. There's no stigma. We all have issues, and we are all suffering all the time. And for an organization to be able to support our humanity that isn't broadcast as normal is wonderful. So I encourage your support of NAMI. I went off the handle there. Also, I encourage your support for Buff. We are here because we support each other, and we know this is a place where we can get refuge and where we can share and be the best person we can be. And when we're not the best person we can be, we can still show up. So it's worth supporting Buff to keep us going. So as the ushers come forward, and we'll pass the collection, Melanie will serenade us with a lovely song. She'll perform her magic, as I say. If your collection is for Buff, then just put it in an envelope. Otherwise, all the cash collected today and the checks will be sent to NAMI. Thank you.
We thank you for your generosity from your hands, your hearts, and your pocketbooks. Our closing words come from James Baldwin. The longer I live, the more deeply I learn that love, whether we call it friendship or family or romance, is the work of mirroring and magnifying each other's light. Gentle work, steadfast work, life-saving work in those moments when life and shame and sorrow occlude our own light from our view. But there is still a clear-eyed, loving person to beam it back. In our best moments, we are that for each other. May we all be clear-eyed, loving persons for one another with regular self-examination and with open hearts. And now, let's circle round for freedom, as is our custom.